In progress.
Okay. Welcome, everyone, to the Thursday, September 1st, 2022 meeting of the Humboldt County Planning Commission. And as usual, the County of Humboldt Planning Commission meeting will be held virtually pursuant to Assembly Bill 361 until further notice. Please go to the county website and you can look at the different ways to join us or join us in person. Welcome, everybody that's here. With that, I'll call this meeting to order and ask everybody to join me in a salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Tripp, we'll take a roll call, please.
Alan Bongio.
Here.
Noah Levy.
Here.
Brian Mitchell.
Present.
Mike Newman.
Here.
Melanie McCaver.
Here.
Peggy O'Neill.
Here.
And Thomas Mulder.
All right. Looks like we have a quorum, so we're good to go. All right. So, Director, do we have any agenda modifications for this evening?
There are a couple of supplementals that have been placed on the dais tonight. There are two for Friends of the Dunes. Actually, I may have.
I don't think
There's one. Sorry, I have two copies of the same one. And there is also a supplemental for the Schneider CDP. And then I would ask the chair's consideration of moving item H2 to the beginning of the public hearings.
So you want to move the Friends of the Dune up before the Schneider?
Yes, sir.
I had a different plan.
Okay.
And I'll ask my fellow commissioners after you hear what I have to say. I was thinking that if anything got pulled from the consent calendar, which I think that the one item, the one in Willow Creek probably will, that I'd put that after anything else. Instead of, we usually do things pulled before we go to public hearings. So I would move anything that was pulled from consent till after. My hope is that this is going to not be what the last meeting was regarding the Schneider project. I know there's quite a few people here to speak on it. So I'd like to keep it the way it is, but the director and I did talk a little bit before, and if it is going quite long, maybe sometime around the break time, that maybe we'll then take a break from the Schneider project and jump to the Friends of the Dunes. I'd rather not do that, but I think I didn't think it would go as long as it did last time, so I have to think that tonight it's not going to take that long. It should be pretty straightforward. But what are your guys' thoughts?
Well, I appreciate you putting it to us. I wasn't going to bring it up, but I think since the director did, it was a pretty unusual thing that we did last meeting to reverse the order of those. And those folks at Friends of the Dunes had been waiting a very long time for this hearing and had a lot of people come out. And I would like to think that their item also doesn't have to take too much time so that we could get to the Schneider. But, you know, to try to make up for switching the order last time, I think it might be fair that we move them first this time.
Okay. Any other thoughts?
And I would agree with that sentiment as well, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. That's two to move it up. What's everybody else's thoughts? Mike, Melanie, you have any thoughts? Brian?
Well, I will be recusing for the Schneider project.
So that's just something to keep
Yeah.
in mind. As for the order, I do think there's something to be said for fairness in putting the Friends of the Dunes first this time, since we reversed it last time.
Okay.
I would just add that I would still like to see anything pulled from the agenda, from the consent agenda, put at the end of the public hearings.
Agreed. I also support that.
Well, it appears the consensus is that we will move Friends of the Dunes ahead. I will follow the lead of my fellow commissioners, and we will do that. So we will move item H1 and H2. We will reverse them. So with that, we'll move on to item number D, discussion on remote meetings. Director?
Thank you, Chair. This is an item that the commission does every month, and what it does is it says you're going to continue to hold hybrid meetings. One of the things this allows you to do by doing this is that tonight we have 2 members attending remotely. This allows that to occur. If we weren't doing that, they would need to be here. So it's just basically saying you're going to continue to hold the meetings in a manner which is in person and remotely.
All right. Any discussion?
Just a question on that. Is there any look at going to just in person in the future? As the Board of Supervisors talked about that at all?
I think the board is committed right now to continuing to have a hybrid style meeting. One of the things that they've stopped doing, and I'm going to get this wrong, I'm sure, and Destiny can correct me, but is to, they are doing it in such a way that all the board members need to be present in the council chambers, or the board chambers, pardon me. So the way it's structured right now with the original legislation allows the planning commission to attend remotely and in person.
All right. So you need a motion to continue this for? Need a motion?
I'll make a motion that we pass a resolution.
Through the chair, we do have a hand up. I'm not sure if there's public comment on this item.
Who and where? I don't see a hand up.
There.
It's on attendees, okay. All right, well, I guess I probably should open some public comment on this. Go ahead, 7454. I thought this was just.
So this is, in my opinion, you hear me now? Can you folks hear me?
Go ahead.
Yes, it's my opinion imperative that we just go ahead and get away from any concept of forcing people to come into the chamber to have meetings. Remote meetings is the new normal. If the supervisors wish to require themselves to be there, I think that's ridiculous. I think if they're off at a conference or something, they should be able to participate by remote things. This is just the future. This is the normal. COVID did this for us. I don't say to us. And I strongly support you folks just going ahead and adopting a policy where people don't have to come from Southern Humboldt. People don't have to come from Oric. People don't have to come from Willow Creek to participate in your meetings. If you don't adopt that, in my opinion, you're telling the public you don't want us to participate. So I strongly suggest that you go ahead and put this on an agenda as soon as possible and just make this a policy to go ahead and stay with this. No reason to come up every month. I do strongly want you to know that today's zoning administrator meeting was the first time we had a discussion and a policy to move forward with having remote meetings. This actually was required the whole time during zoning administrator meetings, but that's a side issue. And so I strongly support you moving forward with this at this time and make it a permanent policy in the future. It makes no sense for people to have such a large imprint as far as traveling all these distances and can't come, can't participate. So if you don't want to hear from us, just say so. Otherwise, make this a general total policy for the future. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that's calling in that wishes to speak? Is there anybody in the public here that wishes to address this issue? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment on this, bring it back to the commission.
Well, if I may just say, I kind of tend to agree, and I have a question. You know, we do keep doing this a month at a time. Is there any reason why we could not? I understand that's what we're going to do this time, because that's what we have a resolution for, but could we in fact choose to make a resolution that would do it for, say, the next 6 months or something like that?
So right now, this legislation is in place due to AB 361, which is an emergency proclamation due to COVID. It requires that we have to renew it every 30 days.
I see.
And so that's why we have it on the calendar every month, and sometimes it's twice a month if you guys have a period which is more than 30 days, so that we can ensure that we are socially distancing appropriately.
Okay, that answers that. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Do we have a motion? I thought Peggy was ready to.
I made a motion.
Did you make it? And second?
I'll second.
All right.
Yeah.
All in favor? Tripp, go ahead. Roll call vote.
Alan Bongio,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
and Thomas Mulder.
All right.
And Mike Newman says yes.
Sorry.
All right.
I'll admit I got confused there. I'm a little embarrassed.
Thank you, Tripp. Motion carries unanimous. All right, so that brings us to public comment. This is time when anybody can speak on any item that is not on tonight's agenda. So if anybody in the audience would like to speak, please come up to the microphone. And welcome.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Cool. So my name is Vanessa, and I'm here to talk about the bigotry and the racism that occurred at the last Planning Commission meeting.
I don't mean to stop you, but that's on our agenda tonight. So you'll have your opportunity.
This is not about the permit itself, it's about your behavior, Alan. So.
I would still say that's, okay. Go ahead.
As a community member and a guest on Wetland Land, the words and actions of Alan Bongio were disrespectful to the original stewards and inhabitants of this land. It is an example of racism in action. The fact that he continues to sit up there today, the fact that he continues to sit up there today shows the inherent structural racism and racial power dynamics embedded within the county. While the real issue is structural and systemic racism, I ask the Planning Commission to hold themselves and each other accountable for the discrimination that occurs in these chambers. This has not been the first time that Alan has been rude or disrespectful to community members, but his most recent actions are a reflection of his racial prejudice towards the Wiyot people. I suggest that Alan, at the very least, recuse himself from voting on the Schneider Coastal Development Permit, as it has been made clear that there is an implicit bias. I hope that the Board of Supervisors take action and address what occurred here 2 weeks ago. I know that they're probably not here. Let us all remember that we're on unceded Wiyot land, and that we, as guests on this land, should support and uplift the voices of the Wiyot people.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to go to the phone, and the first caller is 7454.
My name is Kent Sawatsky, and I come before you very humbly. Unfortunately, I believe in reincarnation, and I'm the lowest on the totem pole. The human race is the only species, in my opinion, that really doesn't even belong here. And I have a major problem with anybody in the human race claiming that this is their land. I don't care if it's the Wiyot, I don't care whatever. This is the land of the eagle, the land of the bear, the land of the fish, and being a member of the only invasive species here, which I unfortunately am, and I feel I've been reincarnated many, many times to be that. I want to apologize to the fish, and I want to apologize to the wolves. I want to apologize to the eagles, and the rightful occupants of this land. I unfortunately feel that there have been caretakers of the land, which I refer to as, I guess, the indigenous people here. And I don't care if you've been here for 3,000 years or 30 days, we're all part of the invasive species. And we all have to admit that. And I won't claim to own any of the land that I technically own. All I am is a caretaker of that. And I have multiple burial sites. I have multiple villages that Mother Nature has given me to be caretaker of, and I'm proud to do that. One of the best days I had in my life was when I had a burial site, and I had the tribal members out there, and we talked about it. I said, I'll deed it to you, I'll give it to you, easement, whatever you want. And they said, no, we trust you to be the caretaker of the bones of our people. Well, I'm asking everybody to look at what we've done. I don't care, you know, I'll be very direct. I mean, anybody who's out there, myself included, pouring concrete, blocking passageways for the animals, that major elk herds that are going through here, and it doesn't matter whether you're a tribal member or not. I want everybody to acknowledge, and I would like everybody to acknowledge, we are the only invasive species here, and we're the only species that has caused irreparable damage to our environment. And I just find it a little bit hypocritical for anybody to say it's anybody other than Mother Nature's land, be it a tribe or be it somebody who's been here for only 30 days. So I had to make that comment. And I'm sorry if I've offended anybody out there who are tribal members. I've reached out to a lot of people over time to express my opinion. I believe in karma, and I believe that it's Mother Nature's property. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
All right, thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on public comment? Seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and we're going to come back to item number F, which is the consent agenda. And as always, I will call out the items on the consent agenda. Anybody can raise their hand, have that item pulled. Anybody can call in and have that item pulled, or a planning commissioner can have it pulled. So the first item on the consent agenda is review and approval of the July 21st, 2022 action summary. Excuse me. Is there anybody who wishes to have this item pulled? Seeing none, I will leave that on consent. Item number 2, staff action summary for July 21st, 2022. Is there anybody who wishes to have this item pulled? Seeing none, I'll leave it on consent. Item number 3, the action summary for July 28th, 2022. Anybody wish to have this one pulled? Seeing none, I'll leave that on consent. Item number 4, the August 18th action summary. Is there anybody who wishes to have this one pulled? Seeing none, we'll leave that on consent. And
Chair, could I interrupt you for a minute?
Sure.
So I just want to be clear that you just identified the action summaries for July 21st, July 28th, August 4th, and August 18th.
Correct.
Thanks.
I think there was one more than that. 21st through the 18th. That correct? Okay. That's what I have in front of me. I don't know if there's something changed. And then item number 5 is High Canyon LLC conditional use permit in the Willow Creek area. And I see a hand up already, so this item will get pulled, but we will not do our usual address this item right now. We'll wait till after we've concluded the Friends of the Dunes and then the Schneider project, and then we will get to items pulled from the consent calendar. So with that said, we will move to item number H2, which is the Friends of the Dune.
Chair, could I get a motion on those items that
Oh,
remain?
I'm so sorry. I'm trying to keep things moving fast so we have lots of time. Apologize.
Also move.
Mr. Chairman, I would move items 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the consent calendar.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second.
Okay, Brian's the first, Mike will take the second position. Any discussion? Okay, Tripp.
Mike Newman,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
and Alan Bonggio.
Yes. Motion carries unanimous. All right, thank you, everyone. So now I'll take that staff report on Friends of the Dunes.
Hello, Commissioners. This is Jordan Mayer with ICF. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great. This applicant, the Humboldt County Nature Center Friends of the Dunes, is requesting a modification to the previously issued coastal development permit and conditional use permit dating from 2007. The Friends of the Dunes applied for a modification to the latest modification to these permits in 2015 to continue dune restoration and trail work on an additional 3.6 acres that was acquired, known as the Bar property. That's parcel 41175. The proposed project would manage public access, remove non-native invasive plant species to restore sensitive dune mat plant communities, and install a fence along the eastern property line of the former Bar property. The amended permit would allow the continued implementation of a restoration and management plan for restoration activities on Friends of the Dunes properties, including the most recently acquired former Bar parcel. So the two main documents that I'm drawing information from and that were summarized in the staff report is the updated restoration and management plan for the Friends of the Dunes. The latest update was from October 2021. This is a living document that gets updated periodically in consultation with several regulatory agencies in the county. And then the other document we reviewed was the CEQA document, the draft initial study of mitigated neg deck that was circulated for 30 days prior to the hearing being scheduled. So here's an image of the Bar property. You can see it highlighted in blue in the center of the screen. And it abuts Lucas Avenue, which runs into the I forget the name of this road, the Samoa Road there. It's in the community of Manila. And there's a Manila Community Service District just to the west of that parcel. And you can see this is part of a contiguous dune community, and it's partially forested as well, but it does abut to the east residential properties. Here's just some images from the restoration plan and that were used in the CEQA document. And you can see this dark blue outline of the former Bar property again, and it has several mapped invasive plants and endangered beach leia habitat. And there are other known populations of endangered federally protected plants on this property in the dune mat area. And part of the project would be to manage access. Right now, there are a lot of crisscrossing paths used traditionally by horse enthusiasts and hikers that were bisecting through a sensitive natural community known as dune mat. And so part of this restoration and work that's proposed on this parcel is to manage that access. Some of it, there'll continue to be horse access from the gate on Lupin Avenue, but then there'll be a transition to only hiking access for a portion where it will link up with the rest of the Friends of the Dunes trail network. And several other trails will be decommissioned and allowed to be restored naturally, or if there's invasive plant populations, manually. You can see the Ridge Connector Trail here on this next slide. a little bit closer, and this is what the trail system would look like after all the crisscrossing trails would be decommissioned. And then on the right, you can see the existing gate. It's just a current metal gate with a no trespassing sign, and that would be updated in over like 3 days of work to create this multi-use access trail so that horseback riders can ride in there. And then here's just a picture of the existing designated trail system and coastal access on north and south of the former dune parcel. So you can see there's a Bureau of Land Management Malel system to the north, all the lands managed by Friends of the Dunes, and then lands managed by the Manila Community Service District all make up this real treasure we have on the north coast here. Public comment letters received on the circulated mitigated neg deck. There was 13 received by the deadline, and then an additional 6 have since come in. And so 18 total letters received. 16 are very much for the project, and 2 are against the project. I'll just summarize briefly. The supporting letters highlighted the good track record of Friends of the Dunes and their mini dune restoration projects and the educational experiences that a lot of people have been enjoying there. The 2 letters against the project had variable reasons. The first letter wanted a certified wetland delineation report to replace mitigation measure Bio 6, which allows for the restoration manager or a qualified wetland scientist appointed by them to map wetlands that are to be avoided during trail work or invasive plant removal. This letter against also requested the project to be conditioned to prescribe a 250-foot wetland buffer on those certified delineated wetlands, where I presume trails would not be allowed to pass through the buffer. The other letter did not support the project for several reasons, including the perception that dune restoration increases flooding, it increases predation of domestic animals, and it leads to dune mobilization and die off of beach pine, which is also a sensitive natural community. In addition, this author believed that horses would be unfairly or uncharacteristically limited on the parcel, despite them having a long history of unregulated access to the beach through several trails. So just wrapping up here, I just got 2 slides left. Here's just an example on the screen of 3 comments that are all for the project. And I just wanted to highlight, like the Humboldt Baykeeper, a retired ecologist with the U.S. Department of Interior, a botanist with Six Rivers National Forest, several professionals and enthusiasts also wrote in letters for the continued restoration of this project. So here in red are the 7 ongoing mitigation measures that are made conditions of the project approval. That includes the restoration manager conducting biological surveying and monitoring of ongoing work, mapping off sensitive areas so that workers and volunteers don't enter or pile invasive plants in those areas, and provide volunteers and workers with environmental awareness training. There's limitations for grass flaming and how bush looping is treated, and how wetlands are delineated and demarcated and avoided. And then, of course, there's an inadvertent discovery protocol for any of the restoration work, that should any artifacts or cultural resources be discovered, they be immediately reported and protected. So staff recommends the Planning Commission adopt the MND and approve the CDP and NCUP for this project as conditioned. And it would allow for the continued use and restoration of the Friends of the Dunes properties while improving and controlling access to the former bar parcel to the benefit of local community members and special status plant and insect species, as a matter of fact. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for staff? Mike, go ahead.
Yes, I have a question regarding the entrance on the trail to the bar property on Lupin Avenue. It looks like it's figure 7 on page 80 of the report, page 80 and 81. And I'm wondering about vehicle parking along there. What has been proposed for people parking to go onto that trail then to help with any extra people parking along there, excluding the current occupants that own homes along Lupin Avenue?
That's a good question. Just give me 1 second. I'm looking in the document. I believe there's a there's a no parking sign is going to remain there. They're not creating new parking spaces. The idea is this access point is mainly serving the local community. And there are a few like on-street parking areas, unimproved, along that avenue.
Is there anything for in the future if there happens to get to be overwhelming parking along Lupin Avenue there from visitors?
No, there's not a condition about future traffic built into the staff report now.
I'm just wondering if there can be something along that line of any type, because it is a trailhead right there. And it looks like it's right at that very southern end of the property.
That's correct. It wasn't anticipated that it would increase traffic to that access point. It would merely be controlling and accommodating local access.
Okay, the director has got my attention, would like to say something.
Yeah, I think the intent is to really maintain the status quo, and as the initial study identifies, to really provide localized access at that point. Given that that area is posted for no parking, that then becomes a traffic violation like any other traffic violation.
But we're talking about just along the fence right there at that trailhead, is that correct?
I believe that's correct, yes.
Because you can't post no parking unless you've got houses along that area there. Is there any consideration that can be done for in the future if there happens to get to be a problem? Because this is a whole new thing there. I mean, it's been used, I'm sure, but it's been no trespassing and a fence. And I'm certain that local people just climb the fence to go there. But when it's open now and in the future, you know, there'll be horseback riding and that. I don't know if there's thoughts about where those horses, the trailers get parked and that sort of thing.
Well, I think this wouldn't be the location for people to access the property with horses unless they were local. So there are other places that have parking that could provide access. And so this is really, as I think the initial study says, and trying to point out, is this is really intended to serve the community. I think in the future, if there are problems there, and it would be the desire of the community that the streets could be posted for no parking. But like you mentioned, for residents, sometimes when you're having guests and things like that, that becomes inconvenient too.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
All right. Brian, I saw you had your hand up and then it's gone now, so did your question get answered?
Well, my question was fairly similar. I just wanted to make sure that with public access to coastal resources, that there was not going to be any restriction of any further types of activities in terms of the public being able to access the bar property. But it sounds like that was answered in the previous discussion.
All right. Anybody else before I open up for public comment? All right, seeing none, I will open this up for public comment. Is there anybody here that wishes to speak on this item? Please come up to the microphone.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Mike Cipra. I'm the Executive Director of Friends of the Dunes. Friends of the Dunes is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to conserving the natural diversity of coastal environments through community-supported education and stewardship programs. We have more than 1,000 members and supporters, and this year marks Friends of the Dunes' 40th year of working with the community and with coastal environments. This project, at its core, is about enhancing coastal access and about native dune habitat conservation and restoration. It proposes extremely modest developments in order to accomplish this, consolidating trails, providing access for the community, and reserving the right to conduct restoration on this 3.6 acre parcel under an approved restoration plan with appropriate sideboards and conditions to ensure protection of natural and cultural resources. And when we say restoration, I kind of want to break that down of what that means in practice for Friends of the Dunes. It is removal by hand of invasive species. There's no herbicides used. There's no heavy equipment used. These are trained volunteers going out with the restoration manager. So by definition, it's community supported. And by definition as well, it is slow and incremental, and it's work that's accomplished over years. That's what we're asking for. Extremely modest developments like a trail sign. We've worked with our neighbors and scaled back the development. Jordan presented a fence. The neighbor right next to there at 345 Lupin asked for there not to be a fence. We've removed that from the plan. The neighbor at 345 Lupin and another neighbor who will probably speak tonight asked for that the ice plant that is right there by the road to remain in place so that there's not even a risk of destabilization. We've agreed to that. So these are reasonable accommodations that Friends of the Dunes has made in working with neighbors since you last heard this project in 2018. We've been seeking this permit for 7 years. And we'd ask that you advance this project tonight and approve this permit. And I'd like to make myself available at the end to answer any questions that you may have or that come up. And Commissioner Newman, in terms of the parking issue, I wanted to address that briefly. This is a neighborhood trail, and most people access this property through the Humboldt Coastal Nature Center, where we regularly welcome 6,000 people a year to this property on a network of trails. We can provide them information there. There's parking, there are restrooms. We're still going to continue to funnel people there where we have the infrastructure and they can access this property. All we want to do is add the 3.6 acre bar parcel to it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else in the public that wishes to speak on this? Okay, go ahead, come on up and get lined up so that we keep things moving along. Thank you. Welcome.
I'd like you to have that before I start, please.
Please.
You need to see that, please. Okay, go ahead and start the clock. Oh, you did. Those are my prepared remarks. I don't have time to give them. This, Friends of the Dunes is correct. They worked with the neighbors. I'm one of them. I'm one of them who has the letters in there. I do not oppose what Friends of the Dunes is doing. They can do the restoration right up to the edge of the wetlands. No problem. It's in your regs. it's okay. The agenda item he showed up there is not what's in this package that Director Ford left out here. There are Friends of the MCSD's properties highlighted as focal areas. MCSD is listed in this program 18 times. They're not a part of this program. Look at the page on your package that shows the Mitigated Restoration Management Program. You'll find that says checklist. There is no restoration monitoring plan here. This is the same, this is worse than it was in 2018 when you sent it back for review. This one added in the authorization for Friends of the Dunes to do restoration, wetland restoration in the package. If you had passed it, they would have been able to work in the wetlands and avoid them at the same time. I have no trouble with the Friends of the Dunes. If I was Director Ford, I would be embarrassed to look at this. A mitigated restoration program is supposed to be in this package. You are supposed to review it independently and see if it takes care of what's going on or what is supposed to go on. The county has decided that there is no need for a wetland delineation. So Friends of the Dunes gets to look at the dunes and decide where they are. They don't have to give the county a report on where they are, and they self-report. Page 4 is a 2019 self-report. And that's what the county looked at, I think, to confirm that they abided by their permit. Impossible. They've had state and water board people come out there and look at the dunes and where they worked.
You have 10 seconds, sir.
And they say, they don't say they avoided. They say they did good work. They have good knowledge. But they can't determine whether they missed it. There is no wetland delineation report available to check a darn
Sir,
thing.
your time's up. I'm going to be fair
Send
to
it back,
everybody. It's
please.
the same amount of time. Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Hello, thank you. My name is Lisa Hoover, and I'm a longstanding member of Friends of the Dunes. And I'm here in support of the Friends of the Dunes Trail and Restoration Plan, as well as the organization's integrity to carry out the plan consistent with the terms and conditions of the initial study for the project and its community support over many years. Since 1992, Friends of the Dunes has been committed to conservation of native coastal dune habitats through public education, restoration, and monitoring. The Friends property associated with this permit includes a rare environmentally sensitive habitat area that supports 2 federally endangered plant species. Coastal habitats have been compromised by developments and the establishment of invasive plant species. Given the history of conservation and restoration over decades, areas of coastal habitat on the north spit of Humboldt Bay are unique. They're rare, not like any other place in this West Coast, and that they support intact native plant communities and associated dune processes which have sustained and recovered plant communities, as well as expanded their extent, including the increase in freshwater wetlands and increased coastal resiliency to sea level rise. The Friends of the Dunes updated restoration plan follows approaches and strategies used by the Humboldt Bay National Wildlife Refuge and other partners, which incorporate elements of the most current research on coastal dune restoration. The updated plan is also consistent with permits previously issued and approved by the Planning Commission in 2007, 2008, and 2009, and is consistent with the California Coastal Act relative to coastal dune conservation and compatible public access. For the aforementioned reasons, I encourage the Planning Commission to support the Friends of the Dunes Trail and Habitat Restoration Plan Amendment and approve their permit. Thank you very much for listening and your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers here? Okay, I'm going to go to the phones then. First caller, 7454. Go ahead, Kent.
Took me a little while to get muted. I had to have a prompt. You know, the Friends of the Dunes are doing work that's way better than we have from some other organizations. There's people out there who are using, I don't know, it's close to Agent Orange as far as getting rid of a certain invasive species, quote unquote invasive species. They're taking caterpillars out there and going through the dunes with you know, going out there with dozers and things to get rid of them. But I do appreciate, you know, what they do, and I appreciate their attitude as far as permitting. I do think that no matter what, I would think they would want to have some participation as far as delineation of the wetlands, as far as a condition of the permit by outside sources, not necessarily themselves, because that would give them hands-off things, and then say whatever we're supposed to stay 100 feet away from wetlands and things like that, or whatever the distance is. They might want to stay 200 feet away and not have anything to do within that particular area. So I just encourage you to have conditions here that would enable for an outside hands-off determination of where the eshes are, where the wetlands are, and to stay out of it. I strongly support the fact that they are taking and consolidating trails and minimizing the impact upon this area. I strongly support you folks in making sure that there is not just parking at a certain place and go from here to there, but there is ability for the people to participate and enjoy the thing that they're doing here and not impact the neighbors. So this is a trailhead. I mean, they're saying it's a trailhead, and I think that should be a condition that they basically have a trailhead that's developed through all the constraints where there's parking for people and there's possibly even restrooms for people at that location. And I encourage the county to participate with the Friends of the Dunes to make this the best kind of experience for the public to enjoy this wonderful habitat we have here in Humboldt County. So I do support the basic permit, but I think maybe there's some conditions that might be added regarding parking and restrooms and a few things of that nature. That's what it's all about. We don't want people going out there without facilities where they can not have to relieve themselves out in an inappropriate area, and we want people to stay back from these special places. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next speaker, Jennifer Savage. Go ahead.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Savage. I have lived in Manila for just over 20 years and have spent more than a decade volunteering and working for nonprofit conservation organizations dedicated to coastal protection and access. As you know, Friends of the Dunes has been successfully improving public access to our local dunes and beaches while also engaging in education, outreach, and restoration to ensure that these beautiful, fragile landscapes are protected. In my work along California's coast, Humboldt County's coastal dunes are often referenced as the state's most intact, best cared for coastal dunes. Friends of the Dunes restoration success stems from a couple different things. First, their commitment to incorporating scientific expertise. Second, to maintaining a positive relationship with the local Manila community, who is part of Friends of the Dunes. Many Manila residents volunteer at Friends of the Dunes at their stewardship days and attend other events. And Friends of the Dunes, they're one of Humboldt County's most beloved environmental education organizations for good reasons. And in the 20 years that I have been walking and hiking and not climbing over fences around the neighborhood, beach, dunes, and dune forest, every project that Friends of the Dunes has led has improved coastal access for residents and visitors alike while protecting the plants and animals dependent on a healthy environment. As for concerns about parking, fair question, but in my experience, as more trails have opened to the public, we've seen improved community stewardship as a result. So we've seen more parked cars, but fewer abandoned vehicles, less illegal dumping. This is just an example of how Friends of the Dunes' efforts have made Manila a friendlier, safer, and more beautiful place. And this small project will be another example of the good work that they have done. If you haven't come out and explored the Samoa Dunes and Wetlands or other Manila nature trails, this is a good time to do so. So I recommend it. Finally, I hesitate to give any attention to the few people who have, for their own whatever reasons, put forth these loud and unsupported claims about impacts to wetlands and dune stability. I just want to take a moment to say those claims have no basis in fact, and you should refer to the expert studies and analysis in making your decisions. So on that note, I urge the Planning Commission to support the local community by adopting staff's recommendations and issuing a coastal development permit amendment consistent with the CEQA document. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, Julie Ryan. Go ahead, Julie.
Can you? And yes, I hope you can hear me now. I want to support Friends of the Dunes, restoration of the Bar Ranch area. They have an excellent reputation of doing thoughtful, well-researched work in the community. And they're a great community partner, as Jennifer Savage mentioned. And I think it would improve community access to that site, and there's just a whole list of reasons to support this project. So that is all I wanted to say in wave in. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller, Jenny Hansen. Go ahead, Jenny. *6 to unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Very good, thank you. I have heard a lot of what I was going to say, but what I want to tell you is that I've spent 20 years here, and I lived in Manila for 10 of them, and was introduced to Friends of the Dunes way back when, and I've been watching what's been going on in terms of restoration and the care with which everything has been done. And over the time, I've eventually just couldn't help it. I had to share what I could see and was learning with other people. So I won't take very long to say what I have to say. But these dunes, our dunes, are unlike any other dunes. And they're home to all these endangered plants and to the native bees that are essential as their pollinators. And the beautiful dune mat flower gardens that are so rare. They simply can't survive the onslaught of non-native invasive species. I've been a docent now for close to 20 years, and I love to share the fascinating stories I've learned about how closely individual plants and animals depend on each other to survive. And wow, I enjoy seeing the pleasure in people's eyes as they enjoy this delicate beauty of our rare and precious dunes. And I ask you to ensure that they're protected by Friends of the Dunes in ongoing stewardship, and that you, that I'm supporting, of course, the Coastal Development Permit amendments. So thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you. Next speaker is 9334.
Willow, can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So this project is somewhat better, quite a bit better than it was several years ago when we came to see it. But I just wanted to point out that it's kind of off-putting when someone comments, don't listen at all to somebody's concern. There are some concerns, and there were previous concerns. Friends of the Dunes does good stuff, and we support most of what they do, but they've had a bit of a problem with wetland delineation in the past, and it's still a concern. They also have a history of consolidating trails illegally, and that was a big concern in this process in the times that people came previously. Still a concern. I support this, but I want the county to ensure us that trail consolidations and the wetland delineation will be reviewed by the county. It's not okay to just say, well, we decided that we're going to cut off this historic trail and put you here. It's not okay. Anyway, those are my comments, and I hope you will consider listening to people's concerns. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller is Carol Vandermeer.
All right. Hi, my name's Carol Vandermeer. I'm a Manila resident for more than 25 years and a board member of Friends of the Dunes. And thank you for this opportunity to speak in support of Friends of the Dunes to modify our coastal development permit to add just 3.6 acres known as the Bar property. The work to include this small parcel as part of the Humboldt Coastal Nature Center property began over 12 years ago while I was the executive director. In 2010, we began discussions with Jennifer Barr, the previous owner, who originally wanted to build a house on the property, but decided against it and was willing to sell to Friends of the Dunes. The connection to our ridge trail, a large population of the Humboldt Bay wildflowers, and wetland and forest habitat made it a natural addition to our property. In 2014, Friends of the Dunes purchased the former Barr property with a grant from the California Natural Resource Agency. And the purpose of this purchase was to conserve the connectivity of the habitat that supports these federally listed endangered species and state-listed rare plant community of freshwater wetland, and serve as a neighborhood access trail, including equestrian access to the beach. This is a trail that I frequently walk on as a neighbor, and as Mike pointed out clearly, the main access to our property will continue to be the Humboldt Coastal Nature Center with restroom facilities and parking. But as a neighbor, I know many of us have gone on this property, and it provides that wonderful connection to the beautiful coastal dunes. So I encourage you to support this project and support this amendment to our coastal development permit. Thank you.
Thank you. Next caller is Nancy. *6 to unmute. That's fine with me.
Nancy, you should be able to unmute yourself now.
Unmute yourself, please. *6.
Okay.
There we are.
Okay, sorry it took so long. I just was commenting that my comments will be brief. I'm sorry it took so long for me to get on. I strongly support Friends of the Dunes application for a modification to its coastal development permit for the Bar property. As you've heard, Friends of the Dunes has done remarkable work in restoring native dune habitat on their properties, and they've been incredible at providing and promoting access to the beach and dunes here in Manila, and providing educational resources regarding these habitats. And I wanted to say that I saw in the written comments to the commission concerns that the Friends of the Dunes proposal in the permit would impact wetlands. And I just want to point out that you received information in your packet that shows that these claims are unsupported, that a multi-year image analysis at Lanphier Dunes shows that wetlands in the deflation plain behind restored foredunes have grown since there has been restoration, pointing out to net growth of coastal freshwater wetlands and restored ecosystems. Again, I would be really sad if this project that's been since 2018, that Friends of the Dunes has been trying to restore and provide access at this property gets delayed. I think that would be a mistake. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? Seeing none, I'm going to close the public comment. I'm going to bring this back to the commission. So, is there, oh, go ahead, Director.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify something that, you know, there's a lot of comments about wetland delineations not being addressed. And in the initial study, mitigation measure Bio 6, there is the requirement that the restoration manager or a qualified wetland scientist appointed by the restoration manager flag any wetlands before doing any work. And each of the mitigation measures do identify that these are continuous and ongoing with annual reporting provided to back to the county. So I think it's important to recognize that has been addressed. And I would just also like to say that normally when we talk about development and setbacks from wetlands, we're talking about installing some kind of facilities, structures, houses, that kind of thing. This is restoration work. Then the restoration work really is removing invasive species so that the natural biota can regain a foothold. And so it's not development in a traditional sense, it's restoration work. I just want to clarify that for the commission.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
So that was going to be one of my questions, and thank you, Director, for coming forth with part of that. That poses another question by me on this. You're saying that, I'm looking at Bio 6 under attachment 1B, which is page 27. I don't see in here where there's a report to the county on this.
So if you look in the box right below the narrative paragraph,
okay,
and it says monitoring frequency, it says continuous with annual reporting and monitoring summary to be submitted and to be verified by is Humboldt County Planning and Building Department.
Okay, how has that been in the past?
So early on, in all honesty, there was a period when the reporting wasn't done, and that has been corrected, and now there is annual reporting being done. And so at this point, I would say it's much more of a continuous and cyclical event that's occurring.
So it's a regular ongoing
Yep.
point at this juncture and been made aware. So it's on the radar all the time.
Correct.
All right.
Thank you.
Melanie, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to give my comments since I believe we're at that point. I think that the Friends of the Dunes are doing a really good job. And the reason for that is that, you know, a lot of times you see ecological restoration done mechanically or chemically. And while that can be better, you know, in terms of the microbial environment, because that's what we really need to get at is the microbial environment. If the microbial environment isn't right for the natives, they're not going to continue to grow there. But given that the Friends of the Dunes does have a record of really staying on top of it, which is what you need to do if you're not going to use chemicals or mechanical means, then I think that we should give them the opportunity to, you know, show how great this restoration can be. Because as any gardener probably knows, doing everything by hand is not easy. And I think they should be given the opportunity to show that they can do that. That's all. Thanks.
All right. Thank you. Anybody else? Go ahead, Noah.
Sure. I want to second what my colleague Commissioner McCaver basically just said, and add that, you know, this Friends of the Dunes and this permit has had a pretty rough run coming before our commission a couple times. we, I think with good intention, set them back many years. I certainly did not expect when this first came before us in 2015, or not first came before us, but the first time I was involved in it, that it would be another 7 years before we were at this point. I do, however, remember a couple of things that we asked of them. One was that we wanted to see a new comprehensive restoration program, restoration plan that took into account all of the properties that they now owned and didn't just sort of add on to what was already written. We also did take to heart the fact that there were a number of concerns still being expressed by a number of community members, and we urged them to meet with them in good faith to try to really hear and accommodate those concerns. And I just want to commend the way they have done both of those things to a great extent, to an exemplary extent. I think the new restoration monitoring plan, restoration and management plan from late 2021 is exemplary. I think it is comprehensive. I think it really ties together their goals with their methods, with their projected outcomes and metrics in a way that I'm very impressed by. I think the mitigation and monitoring and reporting program checklist is robust, and I'm glad to hear Director Ford affirm that they have been meeting those obligations for a number of years now. I think it's also really notable how much progress they have made in, let's just be frank, winning over some of the pretty deep-set opponents that they seem to encounter in these earlier meetings, and to hear people say that I was an opponent of some of their earlier efforts, but I now appreciate the way Mike or staff has met with me. My concerns have been accommodated. They've given me what I asked that seemed to be reasonable accommodations. All of that really speaks very highly of this organization and I think of this project. So I'm certainly ready to recommend that we approve it. And I have no further questions.
All right. I had my hand up. It doesn't seem anybody else does. I agree with just about everything I've heard. I have a concern, though, that we're calling this a trailhead. And I've been to a lot of trailheads, and there's always a parking space or something there. And especially if you're going to have horses, you got to have a place to turn around the trailer. This is not a trailhead. This is just an end of a road where you can go into this property. So I have real reservations about approving this project the way it is. I'm not against the project if they want to add the land, but I don't believe that this can be, at this time, can be a trailhead. I mean, if this was anybody else putting this project in, they'd have to have all kinds of plans. They'd have to deal with bathrooms, ADA issues, all the things that go along with developing anything. So I believe if this is gonna go as the project stands, I'm not gonna be for it tonight. I'm not against the project. They wanna go out and pull the weeds, that's great. I'm just saying that I don't believe that this, and they've had lots of times to plan for this, so I don't think it's because they didn't know about it. I think it's that they don't want to address that issue, and that that is a huge issue that needs to be addressed. So that's just my thoughts on it. Anybody else? I'd love to move it along, though, so Noah, if you want to make a motion, please feel free.
Well, sure, and I certainly hear and respect your concerns about that, but if nobody else has any further comments, I would make the motion that we, oops, sorry. Let me just get to that page. Yeah, thank you. I would move that we adopt the mitigated negative declaration prepared for the Friends of the Dunes to the project pursuant to section 15074 of the state CEQA guidelines, and adopt the mitigation monitoring and reporting program pursuant to section 15097 of the state CEQA guidelines, and make all the required findings for approval of the amended CDP and conditional use permit, and approve the Friends of the Dunes, Inc. amended CDP and CUP permits subject to the recommended conditions.
All right, thank
I'll
you.
second.
Okay, Melanie, you had your hand up still. Did you have something else you wanted to say about it, or did that just stay up from your last time?
Just up, still up.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Thank you.
Any discussion?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
I would just like to express my my congratulations on finally seeing some deviation from before, and it was good to hear that there is annual monitoring and reporting on the wetlands and all the delineation and all of the restoration work that is being done there. That was one of my main concerns back in the day, was the reports were sporadic and few and far between. And with management now that is there and the volunteers, I'm heartened to hear that that is going on and will continue there. And that's why I wanted to double check about what was being reported and make sure that that's out to the public. I do have a little reservation about the trailhead, as I said at the first, but as I've heard, it's more of a neighborhood access, but I would like to see plans if it starts getting to be a problem there, that the Friends of the Dunes would be taking a look at that. But I agree with my fellow Commissioner Bongio that for most other things, there would be more requirements for a trailhead. But in this case, for this project, I'm okay with how it stands. I just want to make sure that in the future, if there gets to be a problem, that plans are in the works then, so it's planned for. So just keep an eye on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Any further discussion? Okay, we have a motion and a second. Tripp, roll call vote, please.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Alan Bongio,
No.
Melanie McCaver,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Mike Newman,
Yes.
and Brian Mitchell.
Yes.
All right, motion carries 5-1. Thank you, everybody. Usually we take about a 5-minute break now, so we're going to do that, and then we're going to come back and we're going to take up the Schneider project. So be back in 5.
Could I say something now?
Yes, go ahead, Melanie.
Since we're taking a break and this will be directly after the break, I think I'll just recuse myself now, and I will be entering the meeting as a participant.
All right. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
We'll see you in 5 minutes then.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Welcome back. I'm going to take a few seconds at the beginning of this. We've all seen, some of you were here, some of you read about it in the paper. I want to apologize to the tribes if I in any way offended them. I did try to reach out to all of them. I was able to talk with the Bear River Band and their TIPO, had a very good discussion, and I reached out to the other two, Blue Lake and the Wiyot tribe, 4 times and never received a call back. So I just wanted to put that out on the record. And then it also came to my attention that some of the people that were in the audience at the last meeting were trying to speak to the Planning Commission and were not acknowledged. We had 3 people watching it. I never saw any of those hands come up. I truly apologize if anybody on either side of the item were not allowed to get up and speak. So the one that comes to mind is Michelle Vassell in her article said that she was denied. So I'm going to make...
Excuse me, Chair, I'm sorry. Trip we're not on.
I'm not doing this again.
Sorry about that. Sorry, I hit the button.
So I'm very sorry, but I'm going to make a special time at the beginning if there's anybody from any of the tribes that would like to address the commission that feels that they did not get to address the commission last time, or that I somehow overlooked them and did not acknowledge them, I would please ask you to come up to the microphone now, and I'll give you as much time as you want. So is there anybody who would wish to speak? I'll look at and also see if there's anybody who's called in that would wish to speak. I'm
So
seeing
Chair,
no phone-
associated with that, you are opening public comment for all. You're just giving
I'm
first
just
priority.
doing this for anybody from the tribes that felt that they may have not been recognized at the last meeting.
I understand that, but I just want to be clear, we're entering public comment.
Yes,
Okay.
for them only, not for the whole. Well, how can, we will have public comment for everybody else as well, but not at this time. It'll be after we have some staff report or whatever we're getting tonight. I don't know what that is. So I'm not seeing anybody anyhow, so I'm going to close the public comment and then I will open it up again afterward. So with that, I'd ask for a staff report.
Thank you, Chair Bongio, members of the Planning Commission. My name is Cliff Johnson with the County Planning Department, and waiting for the shared screen to pop up on Zoom, hopefully.
I just lost a bunch of cameras and access. We got to take a couple-minute break while I talk to my boss.
Okay. So we're going to take a break. Sorry about that. All right. Welcome back. Now, Cliff, it's your big turn.
Thank you, Chair Bongio. I'm still Cliff Johnson. So as soon as this comes up on the screen, hopefully I'll share a few slides, but just wanted to mention again that this is a coastal development permit modification and a special permit modification to allow for an alteration in the location of a single-family residence that was approved for a permit in 2017, as well as construction of a fence and for the removal of a temporary road and restoration of ESHA areas that were disturbed without obtaining the proper coastal permit ahead of time. So this was heard by the Planning Commission at your last meeting 2 weeks ago, and it was continued at the request of the Planning Commission to give planning staff an opportunity to meet with the Wiyot Tribe, the Coastal Commission, and the Blue Lake Rancheria to try to address some of the concerns that they had raised in their August 17th letters, I should say. The Planning Department was unsuccessful in meeting with those groups, and so we are bringing this back to you. We have made some amendments to the recommended conditions of approval in an attempt to address some of the concerns that we believe were raised in those letters. And so you do see some revised conditions of approval in your staff report. And then what I have here up on the screen is just showing real briefly the site as it appeared in December of 2021 before the stop work order was placed. And this is an image, the most recent one that we have in June of this year, and you can see that it hasn't really changed. So at a little bit after 5 o'clock yesterday, we did receive comments from the Department of Environmental Health, who did point out to us that there is not currently... Are we good? Yeah? Okay. That there's not currently an approved septic permit for the for the residents. And so they did ask that we add some conditions of approval, and so you're not seeing these in your staff report, but we are recommending that if the Planning Commission does choose to approve this, that you would add recommended condition 19 and 20, which basically requires them to obtain a wastewater treatment system permit from the Division of Environmental Health prior to lifting of the stop work order, and then also to demonstrate that the road that was constructed on the adjacent parcel did not disturb or remove the ability of the areas designated for reserve and primary leach fields to be constructed on there. Given that there was very limited grading involved with the road on the adjacent parcel, we think that that probably will be able to be shown. I do understand that the applicant has been working with the Division of Environmental Health today to apply for and try to obtain that permit. So given that there have been a number of concerns raised, most specifically in the August 17th letters from the Wiyot tribe and the Blue Lake Rancheria and the Coastal Commission, and that they have stated that they do not believe that the project adequately addresses coastal resource impacts, we have prepared an alternative resolution for you, which is in the staff report, to deny the project. And so I don't want to take up too much time, but I'm happy to walk the commission through either of those resolutions and the findings that we've prepared for you, both for approval and for denial, should the Planning Commission want. And so with that, I'm just going to stop my presentation and answer any questions that you have.
Okay. Anybody have any thoughts on that? My thought would be that we hear public comment, we do everything, and if we're having issues with coming to agreement, then we look at those potential other remedies.
Yeah, I'd be happy to hear public comment next.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for staff before we go to public comment? I don't. Melanie, I see your hand up, but are you calling in on as a TIPO officer?
That's all she is at this point.
I understand that,
Yeah.
but it wouldn't be, well, she's not a panelist, so. So are you there, Melanie?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead. Did you have something to address us as the TIPO officer?
Have we opened public comment then?
Well, they just told me that she has to be in public comment, so that's why I'm addressing her first.
Okay.
That's what I was just told by the director and legal counsel.
Sure.
Am I correct on that? I don't want to do something wrong. I thought that's what.
That is correct.
Okay. So I'm going to let you go first, Melanie.
Yes, I'm calling in as a public commenter. I'm not a panelist.
Oh, okay.
Is that a question?
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we're opening up public comment. I thought you were calling as the TIPO.
I am.
Well,
oh, okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, good evening, Chair Bongio and your fellow planning commissioners. I'm calling in before you this evening to say a few comments and add a couple of requests. And for those of the public who missed it, I just want to say again that I have recused myself from my position as Humboldt County Planning Commissioner, and I am here representing the interests and requests of the Bear River Band of the Ronerville Rancheria, a local tribal nation who happens to employ me as their tribal historic preservation officer. So this project, as you know, has, the repercussions have been going on for some months. And I do want to say that we, as well as many other tribal members in the county, were relieved to see that the archaeological report showed that there were no significant damages. And I will get to the capping and other requests that we have in a moment. But I did want to add a request on behalf of the Bear River Band of the Ronerville Rancheria towards preventing this in the future. So that is one of our main foci. And one idea would be to have a separate page that is attached to the conditions for each applicant when there are tribal cultural resources. And that separate page has to be signed by the applicant. And we feel like as if that might, because as we know, these applicants by and large they just don't know, or they haven't read it thoroughly or what have you. And so if there was a separate page, perhaps that would help rather than having the tribal cultural resources conditions for the permitting be all together with everything else. So, and we would be happy to work with planning and building on that. So that was my request to the planning director and staff. And then as for your decision tonight, I want to reiterate what I brought up last week, which is that the Bear River Band of the Ronerville Rancheria does not want to see cultural resources disturbed. Indeed, the whole motive here, the goal is to mitigate any damage to cultural resources. And so to protect the cultural resources that are present on site, we do request that the area be capped and or fenced, and respectfully request that you alter the language such that the agreement between the tribes for mitigation be such that it reads as mitigation that is non-destructive. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much for your time.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Melanie. Next caller is Public 7454.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I really appreciate what Melanie said. My understanding is to protect the resources, capped or fences, and it was an or, so apparently to fence this off sounds like it will be a good thing. I was really glad to hear that was no bones came up or anything. I do, you know, I've had a lot of appreciation for the tribes, and I think they're aware of that. And I appreciate their what sound like the Bear River's willingness to go with it. And I guess they can't speak for the Blue Lake Rancheria, and they can't speak for the others. You know, I've been involved in and have been made aware of a situation where somebody actually in the Glendale area did an unpermitted road off of their parcel, which they purchased down to the river, and and the bones were exposed. I mean, they were there, and nobody heard about that. Of course, it happened to be I believe it was actually a tribal member who did that. And the TIPO at the time, I really appreciated. She was a wonderful person. But anyway, I do appreciate the willingness of the tribes to work on these kind of things. Today we had, I think, either one or two things going through the zoning administrator, which were after the fact things. We've had PG&E after the fact. We've had all these kind of after the fact things. So I think it's really good that the community works together. And I appreciate the fact that Melanie's speaking for the tribe. So I didn't hear any comments from the Coastal Commission. So when you open this up strictly for the tribes to comment, I don't know whether you're going to give a special deference to hear from the Coastal Commission, see if they still have concerns. We all want to hear the concerns now and try and mitigate these as best we can and make a deal for everybody concerned. I think it's in everybody's best interest to get on with this and get beyond this and set up procedures in the future so everybody's aware of what's required of them. And I didn't know, I know what blackberries are. I picked native blackberries when I was a child, very, very privileged thing to have, very small little berries. The Himalaya berries are completely different. So I have no problem with what I consider to be an invasive species, the Himalaya berries. On the other hand, you know, everybody needs to understand the rules. If you tell us everybody's aware of the rules when you get a permit, these rules should be down in writing. They should be signed on the permit so everybody understands their criteria. So there's no more potential problems as far as misunderstandings. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and hopefully this will move forward with resolution, and the applicant in this case can go ahead and button up their house and enjoy the wonderful world in which sounds like they live in. So thank you for my opportunity to speak.
Thank you. Next caller is Elena Taylor. And I don't have any more hands up, so anybody who wishes to speak that's in the audience, please feel free to line up over here and after Elena Taylor.
Did you mean Ellen Taylor?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I pronounced that wrong.
Yes, I'm Ellen Taylor, and I'm the chairperson for the Lost Coast League, which is an organization that concerns itself with public trust values and has since the 1970s. I only heard about this case because of the general clamor and outrage caused by last week's meeting. The whole tenor of it took us back to the 19th century when the vicious behavior of the colonial settlers of the county who wanted to sweep the indigenous population off the landscape. But after examining the relevant sections of CEQA, the conditions for exemptions, and considering that it isn't the 19th century anymore, I'm against granting the CEQA exemption requested by the project because it meets the description of exceptions to this exemption at section 15301 through 15333, number 2, letters A, B, C, and F. As for A, this project, which though ordinarily insignificant, is located in a setting which is and near an environment which is particularly sensitive. With B, cumulative impacts have been overwhelming over time in this area. With C, the circumstances are unusual in that it will remain in close proximity to a family home and thus at risk for increasing impacts. And F, with the archaeologic issues, it is a historic resource. After reading these exceptions, I'm not in favor of granting the exemption because the project meets many terms of the exceptions. Also, the original violation was flagrant. Questions of the significant ecological nature of the place or the rights of previous culture which existed there did not cross the minds of the developers. This cannot keep happening. The fact that the project owner is powerful and is building a mansion seems to be playing a factor here because the Planning Commission is not averse to even making people tear down their houses in less magnificent circumstances. It's pattern and practice. Additionally, this is a very significant archaeologic site since it was apparently identified 100 years ago. It needs considered protection. One more thing, it would be a disgrace for the county to approve this exemption after the Planning Commissioner's behavior last week. Thank you.
Thank you. There's another phone caller, so I'll pick him up, and then anybody who wishes to speak, start lining up out here. Public 9020. *6 to unmute yourself. There you go.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, this is Andrew up at Trinidad, and thank you for allowing public comment. And yes, I would just like to address an issue that hasn't really been addressed, which is the Fay Slough Wildlife Area immediately adjacent to this site. And the site has been undeveloped for forever, basically. And so now this project proposes to build a mansion overlooking a very sensitive area for wildlife. And if you don't know, the Fay Slough Wildlife Area hosts just a plethora of species that winter here. Lots of waterfowl that take refuge there, and owls and short-eared owls and other critters that are just, I don't think they've been given full girth of their appreciation for this project. And thus, similar to Ms. Taylor, thank you, Ellen, I would also suggest that this project should have never been approved under a CEQA exemption because it meets multiple exceptions to those exemptions. And therefore, in dealing with a violation, I believe that the county has the obligation to review, in light of CEQA, all of the potential significant impacts. And those include disturbances to this wildlife area, noise and lights, other types of activities that accompany habitation such as this will have detrimental impacts to the wildlife area. And finally, I'd just like to say that I do believe that the behavior of the planning commissioner last week was very embarrassing for the county. And I just ask that individual recuse himself tonight in deference to his very difficult behavior last week. Thank you very much.
Thank you. First speaker here, go ahead.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Grant Giovanetti, and I am an enrolled member of the Tolowa tribe of the Smith River Rancheria located outside of Crescent City. I'm a lifetime resident of Humboldt County as well as an active business owner in this community, and I've come to propose 2 words tonight to this commission, and that is resolve and compromise. I spoke with my father, who has been an active Native American voice in this community for over 40 years. He was one of the lead professors of Native American Studies at Humboldt State University for over 20 years. He's unable to be here tonight due to meetings over in the Washington, D.C. area. And he's been an active member of the tribal council for our tribe for the last 10 years and is still currently serving. And I asked him for words of wisdom pertaining to this situation, and he simply said there was a colonial mistake. It was referenced earlier, a colonial mistake that was made here, but that this mistake should not define the area that we're talking about, but rather that both sides should come together to not only resolve this matter, but to actually make it a place that this area is celebrated. This area that brings honor to the Native American tribes that are represented here at this plot of land. My father has dealt with multiple issues just like this that have dealt with sensitive issues where there was a clear mistake that was made. That has been said multiple times. But rather than letting a human mistake define the area, they made it a place to honor the local tribe that was represented for that area. My father proposed keeping the appointed agency of the tribe's choice as a continuous overseer of the project until completion is done, to make sure that all guidelines and requirements from the tribes, from the commissions that are represented here, are followed. He proposed a monetary fund or donation that would be made by Mr. Schneider to the tribes represented in this matter, that would not only serve as a way to place a memorial signage with the Wiyot language, giving direct honor to the tribes represented in this defined area, but also as a way to give monetary funds that could be used to further education for the local tribes represented in this matter. We all understand that 2 wrongs do not make a right, but there is an ability for both sides to come together, both sides to give and take a little, but that there can be a celebratory aspect that's brought to the completion of this project that really is enjoying the beauty of this area, of this region, and both the tribe and the current builder coming together in unity and resolving this matter. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody else in the audience here that wishes to speak?
Chair Bongio, planning commissioners and staff, thank you and the commissioners for your time that you spent on this matter. I know it's been extensive, but since the last meeting, I've become hopeful and optimistic with the progress that's been made on this subject matter. County staff has been very diligent and responsive and worked really hard on the revised staff report. So thank you, Cliff. Thank you, John. Several planning commissioners have indicated to me that they have personally and proactively reached out to the stakeholders and have not received any negative comment, which has also been my experience. I'm glad we found common ground with staff's conditions of approval and look forward to moving forward with satisfying the mitigation measures and making the best of this situation. I think this demonstrates one of the best qualities of this community that I have known my whole life and now raise my children in. Our community that I have known my whole life and now raise my children in always finds a way to come together for a resolution on a complex matter. In addition, if you think of any other opportunity beyond this project where we can use our experiences here to continue to bring together our community, county, state, and tribal communities to improve Humboldt County and avoid confusion in the future, I would love to be a part of that. I'm proud of the fact that when I put my kids to bed this evening, we will have shown them how by working together patiently, we can navigate an adverse situation and come to a thoughtful resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who wishes to speak on this item? If there's others, just to keep things moving along, please line up behind the next speaker. That way we can just keep things rolling, get us out of here earlier. Welcome.
Good evening. I'm Mike Bodie. I'm the developer that developed that land. It was zoned 2.5 acre parcels. Did you realize before that, that area was a big mound? They took all the dirt to build the airport. And Mid-City, Mazda, Harper's. That area has been disturbed constantly for, you know, over the last 50 years. I mean, it was built completely decimated all in there, and it's grown back, and we subdivided it into large parcels, and there's been houses built on them. But tonight, you need to approve, get the stop work order lifted, and let this man go on with his life.
Welcome.
Good evening, Troy Gazzetti, our teacher, baseball coach, golf coach at Arcata High School. I've had the pleasure of knowing Travis Schneider for the last 25 years. He came to Arcata High School as a player, a school leader, ASB president, and a great student for 4 years at Arcata High School. If I have any questions about coaching on the field or constructions with the project at Arcata High School, the first one I do is call Travis Schneider. He's volunteered numerous hours as a coach. He's also volunteered numerous hours as a construction worker and given us many hours of advice for the fields at Arcata High School. Travis has taken the time out of his busy schedule to give us advice for the construction of the fields down below. Through the last 25 years, Travis has always been a man of his word and has shown the utmost character in coaching and business endeavors throughout our community. So thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Hi, Commissioners. Chris Lehman. I live outside Arcata on West End Road. I just wanted to give my personal comments about Travis Schneider, somebody I've known for 30 years. We grew up together, did 4-H together in this community, giving back to this community together. We buried a friend together. The man always is looking to bring people together, always trying to do the right thing for the community. We don't see eye to eye on politics all the time. I'm a little bit more left than he is. But he's always asking my opinion, trying to make things better. And I think, you know, nobody does everything perfect all the time, but I agree with the other speaker that 2 wrongs don't make a right, and you pick yourself up and try to do the right thing. Moving forward, I think he's done an amazing, patient job trying to do that in difficult circumstances, and I hope that he's able to move forward. I take him at his word that he wants to use this situation to make this community stronger and better.
Thank you. My name is Jeff Pauley, and I just wanted to kind of dovetail on what the other folks before me have said, and met Travis when he was in high school. He's always demonstrated leadership skills, and his ability to carry through with what he says he's going to do, and his word is very solid. Every project that I've ever seen his hands touch are nicer than when they started. And with that, the conditions that he agreed to, I'm certain that he would meet everyone. He agreed to them on paper, and you know, this thing is drug on for 8 months now, and I'm just wondering how long, you know, can a guy stand to be held up and not be able to finish his family home. And so I'm just urge you folks tonight to lift this stop work order, let him finish his home, and you know, let him also do the restoration work that he's promised to do. And I'm certain that the project and the site will be much nicer than when it was started. And so with that, I do appreciate your thoughtful consideration for that project tonight. So thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to address the commission? All right. Oh, just saw a hand come up. Jennifer Savage, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate public participation in environmental matters, especially in the coastal zone. I just want to clarify that this is not a reference on what sort of community member Travis Schneider is, nor is it an issue with pros and cons on each side necessitating a philosophical compromise. This is a situation in which Travis Schneider broke the conditions of his legally binding permit, and he's been delayed because he didn't follow the rules that he agreed to in the beginning, and then chose to ignore the county's attempt to enforce the law. So this is a real factual, legally binding situation, and the decisions that are made tonight should reflect that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else who wishes to address the commission? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to the commission. Cliff, did you have something? I could see you reaching for your mic, so.
Sure, thank you, Chair Bonjo. I just wanted to address a couple of the public comments specifically about the environmental review. And, you know, so I think it's really important for everybody to understand what this project is. It is a modification of a project that was already approved. And so the project in front of you is not really, you know, the construction of a new house. It's an alteration in the location of the house, as well as construction of a fence and habitat restoration due to, yes, unauthorized activities. But that is the project that's in front of you. It's not the development of the parcel for residential purposes. That has already been approved, and the environmental review was done, as Mr. Bodie mentioned, for the subdivision of the parcel in 2006. That entire Walker Point area was approved and went through the environmental review process to be a residential subdivision. So I just kind of wanted to clarify what this permit is that's in front of the Planning Commission.
Can I ask you a question? How did the construction begin without a wastewater permit?
Could you repeat the question?
You put a memo up there about him not having a permit for a wastewater system. Is that true?
That is correct.
And how was he permitted without having a design for a wastewater system?
You know, I don't know the specifics of that. The building permit was issued before a wastewater treatment system permit was issued.
Because without that permit, you wouldn't know if the site could have a wastewater system. Typically, there's studies that have to be.
Correct, and I think that's what the Division of Environmental Health wanted to point out, is that given that the location of the residence has now changed, there was actually areas dedicated for, and that had been studied as part of the subdivision for the primary and reserve leach fields. But given that the location has changed, they did express some concern. And so that is why we've suggested that there is some additional conditions that could be added if the Planning Commission does choose to approve this.
Go ahead, Mike.
So I have a couple of questions here for staff. the additions that were done on attachment 1 with recommendations, can you go through those a little clearer, Cliff, and the reasons behind them?
I'd be happy to. Just give me 1 second. So I'm going to try to share my screen. And focus on a couple of these conditions. So what has changed in these recommended conditions from what you saw 2 weeks ago was it was an intention on our part to try to address the concerns that had been raised. Given both the Wiyot tribe and the Blue Lake Rancheria had expressed their concern that the conditions were not clear as to the timing and how they would be implemented and monitored. And so a couple things that we did here, condition of approval number 6, and this is actually primarily in response to Commissioner Levy's concerns. The condition was originally that the applicant would record a conservation easement to the 3 tribes. And so what we've done here is suggested that grant of conservation easement be to the Wiyot Land Trust, which is the Dishgamu, hopefully I'm not mispronouncing that, but Community Land Trust. So that would hopefully make an easier process for both dedication and also management of that easement. We did not change the timing of some of these conditions for submittal of restoration plan and some of the other things that required submittal of review and with consultation with the Wiyot area tribes before those plans would be approved, and before the stop work order would be lifted. So those are still in there. One of the things that we did, we also did clarify in many of these conditions that certain things needed to happen prior to lifting the stop work order. So what you saw 2 weeks ago, not all of these conditions were to occur prior to lifting the stop work order, and we did clarify that for most of these conditions. And the other thing that we did do is with condition of approval number 17, we just wanted to specify that if the tribes were not in agreement about the account manager for the funds, that those would be deposited into an account specified by the Wiyot tribe. And the intent here is that the Wiyot tribe is the one that is most closely tied to this area, and perhaps was most impacted by any of the unauthorized work that occurred.
Can I ask you a question? Just continuing on that here. So in other words, the parts there, number 7 and 15 in particular, along with the change in 17 and then the change in 6, to reiterate what Commissioner Levy was asking about. It says directly, after consultation with the Wiyot area tribes prior to the lifting of the stop work order. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, that it would be after consultation with the tribes that a stop work order would be lifted on these particular items here, in addition to all the others in front. Is that correct?
That is correct. Sorry, that is correct. The the condition would require the county to consult with the tribes on those plans and obtain their input prior to approving them.
Which is generally, if I remember correctly, what those letters were asking for. Is that correct, or Director?
Yeah, I think, so that is the way that we understood them, is that they did want additional time to consult and review the conditions, to review the restoration plan, for instance. And so what we do have attached to the staff report is a draft restoration plan. It's not the final one. The idea here is that before lifting the stop work order, there would be a final plan that would need to be submitted, and we would consult with the tribes on that plan prior to approving it.
So that would be the agreement of the tribes as well as the county before the stop work order is lifted.
Correct, that's the intention.
And I believe the applicant is willing to work with them as much as possible from what I've heard. And I believe that resolve and compromise would be in order here. Those are two key words that I took to heart at tonight's comments, as well as part of my regular dealings with anything here at the Planning Commission. Try to resolve and then to compromise as best as possible so that everybody comes out a winner on that. All right, thank you.
Thank you. I had a question for Cliff before we move on. So with those conditions, there was the additional condition that the Bear River Band was asking for that Melanie spoke of tonight. So would that be in addition to these that you would be putting that there? I thought that was a fabulous idea, that it's how it always should have in my mind been, that at least the landowner should know that he has this on his land, this archaeological site. And that was one of my things that I was going to propose, that in the future we've got to do something like that, because it's, you know, it's what I'm not saying anything about this project. I'm just talking in general. You know, how can you protect something if you don't even know it's there? You know, so I think that's a great idea, that when you purchase a piece of land, that there's something that you have to sign saying, you know, this is where it is, and this is, you know, what your responsibilities are, you know? So if somebody is on your property and you'll know what they're there for, and you can stop it. I mean, it's a protection situation I see for that site. So I think that's a great idea. And I mean, I'd certainly want to know, you know, before we're making a vote, if Mr. Schneider would accept that being added. I mean, I think that's fair to him as the applicant, but I thought that was a good addition to what had been brought to us. So with that, any other thoughts? Noah, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I get into discussing how to proceed with this permit, I feel the need to make some remarks about our last meeting. I actually spoke with Chair Bongio earlier today, gave him the heads up that I was going to do this. But I want to make these remarks to the full public. This past week, I sent letters to representatives of the Wiyot tribe and the Blue Lake Rancheria apologizing for two different things. First, for some of my own comments at the August 18th meeting. And secondly, for the disrespectful way that I feel Chair Bongio spoke about and treated them throughout that meeting. In my own comments, I was trying to be fair and respectful to all involved in that meeting, but I did in fact express frustration and disappointment more than once that no one from the Wiyot tribe or Blue Lake Rancheria or Coastal Commission was present. I was pretty critical of them, in fact, for not showing up before us. I later learned that Ms. Vassal of the Wiyot tribe was on the Zoom and did try to participate. I also want to acknowledge that even had we not had a technological failure that prevented us from seeing her attempt to comment, it is in fact entirely appropriate and within the rights of the tribes or any stakeholder to submit their comments in writing only. For whatever reason, perhaps they couldn't attend or simply chose not to comment. So I apologize for my making an issue of their being absent from that meeting. I also wrote, though, to personally apologize for what I felt were the appallingly disrespectful comments of Chair Bongio towards the Wiyot tribe and the Blue Lake Rancheria at numerous times in that meeting. I wanted to let them know that I was personally offended by the way he spoke about them and to them, and by a tone of bad faith, I thought, towards them. I also was upset not just by the language or his treatment of them in particular, but by the overall biased handling of the matter that I felt infected that item from the start. It portrayed, I felt, our role that we need to strive for to be a neutral and fair and unbiased body when these items and these stakeholders come before us. So I'm only one commissioner, but I am a part of this body. I am proud to be part of this body, and I felt the need to apologize for how they were treated by us as a body. I want to thank Chair Bongio for his comments earlier in this meeting. I really appreciate that he said what he said. However, in truth, to repair the damage that I feel was done by the last meeting towards our relations with those tribes, I don't think they went far enough. And what I would suggest, although it's something that I suggest we consider later in the meeting, because it's outside of the scope of this particular permit, that we might consider agendizing on the next meeting that we could draft a simple and formal apology on behalf of the whole commission to submit to those tribes. And I would offer to work with the chair and with the director to help draft such a letter. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Noah, and I'd be willing to be part of that, so.
So, I don't know, I should disclose that I worked for the Wiyot tribe probably about 30 years ago, and it was hard for me last meeting. I didn't want to get in a back and forth, but there's a history that maybe not everyone's familiar with, but of all of the tribes in Northern California, and I've worked for a couple, there is no tribe that has been treated worse than the Wiyot people. You know, they inhabited all of Eureka, Arcata, Fortuna, Blue Lake, all of those areas, and their lands have been so disturbed. There was a a trip I took with the chairperson from the Wiyot tribe. He wanted me to go and see where his grandfather was buried. His grandfather was the lone survivor of the Indian Island Massacre. So he took me to his burial site, which was right next to the Eureka Mall. And when we got there, he said he wanted someone to know, so in the future they might be able to protect that site. And there was a metal building on top of it. So, you know, to the comments that I think offended me the most was that you were going to have to go to the Indians for their permission to do things when it's a little late. And so if there's a few sites that are left that hadn't been disturbed, I think the tribes have every right to stand up and, you know, try to protect those sites, because most of their sites are now gone. You know, they were forcibly removed from all of this area and marched up to the Hoopa Reservation, and when they came back, their lands were gone. They were inhabited, their homes were burnt, and it wasn't until around 1908 that they created 3 small little rancherias. Table Bluff was one of them. It was 20 acres right on the slough. It was uninhabitable. The wastewater didn't work. The water was contaminated. And I worked with Mike Bodie, and we built homes for them. And that was over 30 years ago, and moved them to the land that they're on now, the 100 acres that they inhabit. But I don't think that we can make the comment that the Indians are going to tell us what to do. And it was very offensive, because they are tribes, and they're all separate tribes. They have separate languages, cultures, history. But, you know, that was very offensive to me too. And I tried to hold my tongue, because as professionals, we need to be respectful of the people that come to speak to us, and listen to both sides, not just one side. So I wanted to say that, and you know, give my apologies as a part of this commission too, to what I felt was a very dark day in our history.
Anybody else? All right. Any thoughts on where we go with this?
Yeah, because, all that said, and I wanted to say that about the last meeting, I do think it doesn't determine how we proceed with this one. I think I would really like to find a way forward that we could actually approve this permit. So I want to just ask a little bit more about what has or hasn't happened in the meantime. Was there any contact between the planning staff and the Coastal Commission for guidance about their concerns about this permit?
Yes.
Okay.
And the very definitive takeaway is that what's being proposed here does not go nearly far enough. They believe that there needs to be restitution and fines imposed, and the conditions need to be more clearly articulated. I don't know if they would still say that with the most recent round of revisions, but they're very clear in terms of the enforcement action also needing to be a part of the permit modification.
Okay.
One of the things we did discuss that was not resolved is whether or not there was the potential to continue the item, to work with them to try to develop a more suitable project that could be approved at the local level and remain at the local level. And there was not a definitive answer to that.
Okay. Any other thoughts? I'm curious, how come they didn't send it? You just spoke with them? There was no written communication? Because I didn't see anything.
No, it was a conversation.
Okay. Okay. Brian, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Sure. So I wanted to ask Director Ford, one of the things that we're asking for here is for the Coastal Commission to grant exceptions to policies such as the 100-foot buffer. And I was wondering if we could require that the portion of the building that was constructed within the 100-foot buffer to be demolished, and so that we are not asking for the Coastal Commission to have to bend rules or to give them a reason to say no to this applicant. Is that something that you've considered or discussed with them?
Yes, and I think that would probably be along the lines of something that would begin to address some of the concerns that were expressed, and that is within the discretion of the Planning Commission to do. This application is to relocate the house. The commission could choose to grant that, deny that, or approve it with modifications.
And I needed to make an ex parte disclosure that after our last meeting, I was invited to go tour the site with the property owner. I did tour the site, and I also reached out to two of the tribal representatives, and unfortunately, with the short amount of time, I was not able to make contact with them. But I feel like the more we can do to correct the mistakes that were made, and I do believe that they were unfortunate mistakes, and the more we can do to correct them at our level, the less we're asking the Coastal Commission to deviate or reasons we give them to deny, the more likely we are to succeed in getting this project completed. So I don't know if your comment that you need more time to talk to Coastal, or if we should just attempt to take those comments and get something approved so that then they can, add other things that they think are appropriate. I don't know what you think is the best way forward, but I certainly would like to try to get resolution for this project.
So I want to be clear on process here. So this is in the county's jurisdiction. It can be appealed to the Coastal Commission. So the decision that's really before the Planning Commission is that are we truly implementing the LCP in a way that's true to the LCP? And is the requirements that are placed upon the permit modification sufficient to address the violations that have occurred? If the Planning Commission's action is sufficient, then there's no reason for an appeal. If the Coastal Commission, and there's multiple ways that can be appealed. That can be appealed by 2 coastal commissioners. It can be appealed by members of the public. If there's the sense that the Planning Commission's approval doesn't go far enough, then there's a likelihood of appeal. So that's the tension that exists. And Commissioner Mitchell, I just wanted to make sure that we're not asking the commission at this time to approve anything. What we're really doing is weighing whether or not this modification goes far enough in addressing the LCP policies, if that makes sense.
So I brought up the idea of not allowing the building to remain within the 100-foot buffer. Are there other coastal policies that the current, what's before us, does not address in terms of following the approved LCP?
Well, I think some of the concerns that have been expressed, since you asked directly, I'll answer directly, is that they're concerned with the size and the mass of the house in a very scenic location, and whether or not that fits within the setting of the property.
Okay, I've had my hand up. So that'll lead me to a question. Is there, in this area, Walker Point, is there any kind of a design review or anything that would address that issue? I mean, I can understand somebody saying, that's a big house, why could it be there? But is there anything in county policy or usually in a subdivision situation? I believe the developer is here, but I mean, there could have been CC&Rs that said, the house is to not be more than X number of feet or that kind of thing. And I don't believe there is, but I'm just saying, is there anything? I'm asking.
So there's the local coastal plan that requires that the house fit within the setting.
Who gets to make that decision? I mean, that's pretty objective or subjective.
It is entirely subjective, but one of the reasons that there is discretion given to coastal development permits is so that you can take into consideration things like the adjacency of a slough, archaeological sites, being on the knoll of a hill, and whether or not that fits within the setting. And so I know that may not be a satisfactory answer, but realistically, those are the things that the LCP calls us to take a look at.
So you've kind of led me down a road that I was kind of thinking about was that taken into consideration when the county of Humboldt permitted this? And I believe it was 2017. I'm not positive on that, but I believe that was.
So in 2017, those things should have been looked at. The thing that I think raises or heightens the concern is that the house was moved out closer to the edge of the slope And so it's more prominent, more visible, closer to the resources.
Okay. I'm sure that might be the case, but was that, I mean, was there anything when the plan was done, when the house was submitted, that was asked about height requirements or anything like that? I mean, most residential, you get a 35-foot height limit. I don't know what the height is out there. I've been out there. The way the house is constructed is almost like a daylight basement with a single story above it, so I don't see the height being a real big issue. But I mean, those kind of things, it must have been evaluated for something.
So we obviously looked at that, and what I'm trying to articulate, Chair Bonjo, is the fact that, you know, what may have happened with the original house and what are the current circumstances, and the things that have been articulated as concerns to me is what I'm trying to convey to the commission, so that you can consider those as you decide what to do with this and weigh the risk-reward of approving something that the Coastal Commission may want to appeal. That's all I'm trying to do. I'm not gonna, I don't want to argue about whether the house is appropriate or not. I'm just saying that there are, and frankly, there are many different perspectives, and how you view something will change from perspective to perspective. And so whether or not that's an appropriate size and appropriate mass moved closer to the edge of the slope, we all have different perspectives on that. But the question is does that fit within the setting that's there? I mean, normally fitting within the setting would not be a large house that silhouettes against everything. It would be something that's tucked back into the landscape where there is the hill behind it and other things that kind of lessen the attention that it draws to itself. That would be a normal design pattern for the coastal zone.
I am truly not trying to be argumentative with you. I just was trying to ask some questions about county policy and such there. That's why I wanted to know, because there's multiple houses at the end of this subdivision that are above average size. I can't tell you what the neighboring houses are, but I'm going to make a guess, and I'm a pretty good judge of looking at a house, having built them for 40-something years, that everything that's at the end of that point is probably in the 4,000 to 6,000 square foot range. Two of them, at least, that are on the hill across the street are two-story houses that are up on the hill and look much larger than the house that the Schneiders are building. Their house may be bigger, but you have to understand how it's constructed, and it's really one level that's at dirt level, and it's got a daylight basement type situation. Some of that's living. I'm not saying it's all garage down there. What I'm getting at is the way the land is, it's like it's a single-story house that is on the land. I don't believe that it's out of proportion with what's there. This really wasn't something that I had any intention of talking about, but when it got brought up, it just doesn't seem like it's relevant in this, because all those houses there are, and those are, let's be honest, those lots were developed to have those kind of houses, and I believe in having all kinds of housing, but those were definitely executive type lots that would have that size and of house on them.
So could I rephrase my answer? If this were to be in front of the Coastal Commission, if it's appealed to the Coastal Commission, that will be a focus of discussion.
Okay. Fair.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I know that we'd like to move this along as quickly as possible, but would it be appropriate to direct our staff to take a look at the last 6 or 4 houses built on Walker Point Road and come up with an average height, an average square foot, and some of that. So we have some actual data so that we can determine whether or not this, is something that we can tweak and alter slightly with what's already been built and have a chance to pass by the Coastal Commission's review should it be appealed to them, and let the staff know that that's sort of perhaps where we're looking to go, and we need the data to be able to make those findings to pass it. Would you be at all willing to give staff direction to analyze that as though it were going to go before the Coastal Commission and look at the LCP and what other things besides the 100-foot buffer is potentially not going to be allowable?
You're asking me to make that choice. I don't think it's my choice to make as the chair. I don't believe, we can.
I'm not asking you to decide. I'm saying, what do you think? I personally think that's the direction we need to go in order to get a satisfactory resolution. But what do you think about that idea?
Well, if the whole commission, if that's what they want, I guess I would go along. I'm only one person. I don't think that now that the how do you say this, the trains left the station in 2017 and the house was permitted, I don't believe that it's appropriate to be doing I don't know, you would call it a de facto design review at this juncture. I understand the concerns with the Coastal Commission. I would rather see the applicant and the Coastal Commission work out something that they can all get behind. The terms that were spoken earlier by the very first speaker I thought were excellent, and I wrote them down, but I'm not going to go back and look for them. And I think that they can work that out. Everything to this point that has been asked for, the applicant has readily offered to give and do. This is after the first thing they wanted was an archaeological report to say if anything was disturbed, and that basically came back that nothing was disturbed, that there was no damage to the archaeological site, which is great. That's huge. So with all the mitigations that have been proposed and everything, I think that we should move forward on this. We all know that the Coastal Commission can do what they want. They've been given those powers, and they can further this if they want. I believe that there was a meeting that was held, and it was in good faith with all the members that had issues in this. We're just going backwards, but there was an agreement made up, and they're close. And I think that we should let those agencies and the applicant move forward and work out those details. I think that we're more of the 30,000 foot, view on this, and not the in the trenches, mucking out the details. We're up to what, 21 conditions, I think, now, if we include the condition that the TIPO officer from Bear River asked for, which was actually, in my opinion, probably the most important one that could possibly happen, because it's going to help alleviate this kind of problem in the future. I think it's about probably 100 years too late that we're doing that. But that being said, I think that our job is to do what has been brought before us. What happens beyond here will happen. I hope that it ends here. I hope that it doesn't have to go to, I believe it would be the supervisors next and then to the Coastal Commission. Oh, the Coastal Commission. So.
It can be appealed directly to the Coastal Commission from the Planning Commission.
Okay. I thought that there was one more step in there.
It can be appealed to the board first.
Okay. That's just how I thought it went.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And then I also just want to be clear about one thing, so I don't want to misinform the Planning Commission. Is the Coastal Commission staff was never really in agreement when we met. We were focused completely on the conversations with the tribes. And so the Coastal Commission was never in agreement.
Maybe you can give some insight to this. I'm sorry, I'm taking up some time here, but you just keep making my mind go to another question. And it seems like if the Coastal Commission was as concerned about this, that they would have, after the passionate plea from Noah at our last meeting, would have responded, as well as the tribes, would have responded in written form. And I know you also reached out to them by phone. At least that's what I was told by you. So I have a hard time not moving this along, okay? We gave the extra meeting. We've actually added conditions, which actually I think that they're really good additions and tweaks to the other ones. And I think that it's our job to move this along. We can't control what happens beyond here. I'm repeating myself, but I think it's our job to do what was put before us, whether we agree with it or not. But I think that's where we're at. So, Brian, you have your. Oh, I'm sorry, Brian. Can you let Brian and then Noah?
Yeah.
And then Mike.
I guess I just wanted to respond to your last comment, Alan. The Coastal Commission sent a letter, and it was very clear to me that they are reminding us that they have every authority to deny this permit, and if we keep heading down the path that we're on, that's where we're going to end up. And so my goal is to try to avoid that dead end and find a way to address these concerns that Director Ford has mentioned that in discussion they have brought up. And I think we're getting closer the more we talk about it, but I think there's more data and consideration needs to be given to the LCP and how this project may have gotten by in the past from deviating from it. And unfortunately, attention was brought back to this project by the nonconformance. And I think, unfortunately, the tenor and the amount of attention that the last meeting brought up did not help. And we have to do, or we should do everything we can to try to get a project that's in conformance with the LCP to the greatest extent feasible, given what's already been done. That's my opinion.
Noah's next, then Mike, then you, Peggy.
Okay, thank you. Well, yeah, you know, I really do accept the understanding that the agreement that seemed to be reached on August 2nd, while important, was not as total a complete as agreement as it may have seemed to either the applicant or to the staff. Given that I accept that, given that we then got these 3 letters from the Wiyot Tribe, the Blue Lake Rancheria, and the Coastal Commission, and given that we have had very little else to go on, I think I want it to be clear that, you know, the planning staff and the planning commission is actually trying to do its best to integrate, to hear, and if possible, to integrate all the concerns that have been raised into what we approve. And I think we're all doing that. So, you know, I have been, since I gathered that there was not a new letter or a new meeting about those letters that were received on August 17th, I have gone back through them, all three of them, to see what more we may be able to pull out and add as conditions or further modify our conditions. I appreciate that in at least a couple of respects, the planning staff did modify and add further detail to the conditions. I also see for myself, and I think it just should be understood, that there are quite a few of those conditions that already will require some future approval by or consultation with the tribes before this can go forward, before the stop work order is lifted. I just think that's really important. This is not the final say-so on this going forward, right? But I do to try to do the best job we can of integrating those concerns that were raised and suggestions that were in those letters, the additional suggestions. I want to ask about one that caught my attention this time. I kind of hadn't noticed it in my first reading in the letter of the Blue Lake Rancheria. Top of the second page, they, Jason Ramos, as the writer of this letter, cites the fact, the history of non-compliance and lack of oversight in this situation, and suggests that the alternate owner builder permit must be revoked in this circumstance due to the lack of inspections and non-compliance with terms of the permit. I have to say that it's really one of the things that I take issue with and have a problem with in this whole scenario is that this was done under an alternate owner builder permit. That was legal. That was a legal pathway for the developer to take. But I think what has happened has shown that had there been more oversight, more inspections, we probably wouldn't have gotten to the point where we're at with this. So, and I think that this puts a spotlight on how I don't really think this is an appropriate type of project to be using the AOB permit. Nevertheless, it was a valid path for this applicant to take because it was there. But what I'm asking about here is, do we have the option at this point in the process to change the sort of permit that this would be proceeding under so that it's no longer under an AOB permit going forward, but a different, regular, or more highly reviewed type of permit for the future completion of this project?
It's an interesting question. Obviously, alternative owner-builder provisions come out of the Humboldt County Code and are intended to be parallel to the normal building code, really intended to allow for people to build homes in very rural environments with alternative methods that would be the equivalent of a normal building code process.
And to promote affordable housing.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, let's not forget that.
Right.
I think that if there were public health, safety, and welfare findings that could be made relative to circumstances associated with this project, it could be appropriate to say that it needs to be converted to a regular building permit issued under the California Building Code.
Well, because I think if we could do that, if that's logistically or legally possible, it would actually be responsive to some of the concerns that have been made about the lack of compliance, but the lack of oversight of what was being done leading to this situation, and a sort of further guarantee that there would be a higher level of oversight required by the permit going forward. So that's why I suggest that that might be something that we could add as an additional condition.
would my fellow commissioners mind if I rebutted that for a second, or? Okay, that's fine, I'll come back to it. Okay, Mike, you're next then.
So I was looking along the lines of what Commissioner Levy was talking about, and looking at that same exact letter regarding the Blue Lake Rancheria and those remarks, and looking at the changes that were proposed in attachment 1 by staff here, it looks and appears that most of those are taken into consideration because the tribes are to be brought in and consulted before the stop work order is lifted. And also the condition number 18, the applicant is responsible for reimbursing the tribes for all tribal monitoring required by this permit. Does that leads me to my question here to the director. Maybe we can hone that in a little bit there, because part of the letter by Jason Ramos is about the tribe's expenses and extra costs for review and providing comments and helping and the revised conditions here. Is that the intention of what number 18 was about there, Director?
Yeah, I would say that the intent of the condition is not looking backwards to costs already expended.
No, it's for the forward costs coming up, because there is additional consultation.
Well, there's not only consultation, but there's, anytime there's anything going on that touches the ground, there would be a monitor on site.
Right, right. So that extra expense for that tribal monitor that's agreed upon by the tribes would be then borne by the applicant.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I see a path forward here, as we talked about earlier, as I talked about earlier, and one of the speakers did, about resolve and compromise. I don't believe that we're bullying it forward. I believe that we're resolving it in a fashion that is comparable and bringing all parties in. Part of what Mr. Ramos talks about was about the possible initial analysis by Jack Henry stating about the 105-foot measurement from the corner of the house to the edge of the wetlands, that could be re-looked at there, and that I think could be possibly added in as a condition here, so that we can make sure about the Coastal Commission and the thoughts in that fashion there. So I would put forth that maybe we could have that as one of the additional conditions here that can be brought forth to pass this tonight. That's all I've got right now.
I have a legal question.
Oh.
Can we legally find a project exempt from environmental review if it's less than 100 feet from a cultural site and a wetland? Do we have that authority?
The CEQA exceptions to the exemptions are listed in the regulation 15300.2. And when it discusses historical resources and stuff like that, it discusses the fact that it has to have a substantial adverse change to the historic resource. And I think that the information has shown that it wasn't actually impacted, but the fencing around would actually help preserve it.
I'm asking you, can we say we want it to be less than? Can't hear you. Can we say that we want it to be less than 100 feet, and do we have that authority?
That's more of a local coastal plan issue. The exemptions from CEQA discuss the cumulative impact, the significant effect, hazardous wayside, scenic highways. Because this is a single family residence, it would be exempt under 15301 and 15302. So the 100-foot setback is more of a requirement of the local coastal plan. Does that make sense?
But aren't we approving that also when we're making?
That's a separate issue from CEQA.
Do we have the legal authority to do that?
Can you repeat the question? The legal authority to do what?
To change the permit requirement then, to lessen it from the 100 feet?
I think so. I think that's your
Yes,
discussion.
you do.
Okay, that's all I want to know, because I don't want to pass a motion that we went against the law and we're doing something that we weren't supposed to be doing.
If I could, the things that you would want to consider, and I think the things that you're asking is, does that reduction in setback cause any impact to that resource? That's the LCP question. The CEQA question is, by moving closer to that resource, does it damage that resource? And if you can find no, it doesn't, then the exemption is completely fine. One of the things to also consider is that we're also evaluating, unfortunately, a situation where, well, I'll leave it there. Yep.
And I think the size of the house, whether I agree that it should have been that size or not, wouldn't have been an issue had it been built where it was originally built, because it was permitted to be there. And, so that's really kind of a redundant issue. It's now not where it was originally. We wouldn't even be talking about it if it had been placed where it should have been placed. So going out and probably analyzing the size of the building really doesn't matter. I mean, it was already permitted somewhere else. And if it was to be reduced or 30 feet taken off of it, that would be a substantial change to the house that's there, right? What would be left of the house?
It would have it would have a dramatic effect on the house.
On the house itself. So I think that, there's been a lot of good recommendations in here, and what we're saying is, even if we said go forward, it can't go forward until all of these items have been, gone through and approved. I do agree that the Wiyot tribe is probably the best recipient. Their enrollment was open to all Wiyot people, so they're the most inclusive of all the tribes. So I agree with that. I agree with, not disturbing and relocating any remains. I think that is what most tribes agree to. Even if we do approve it today, we're not approving that you lift the stop order immediately, because there's still a whole lot of things. And if someone is going to approve it to the Coastal Commission, then that's going to happen irregardless of what we do. So we just have to do something.
All right. Brian's got his hand up, but I think I was ahead of you, Brian, so I'm going to move in here. First, I'd like to address the issue of changing the permit. I think that be going down a really bad, slippery slope. It's going to set precedent. It's going to, I'm going to put it in, I think if this was a different kind of project, let's just pick something that we do a lot of, cannabis. And we said we're going to go change the rules now. We're going to change what we gave, 400 permits or whatever we're at now, 480 permits, I think. And we're going to go back and we're going to change the rules on it now. Now you were approved with this, but now we're going to require this. Whatever it is, I'm just trying to use it as a story. I think that you would probably be the biggest advocate against that. And I say that not because that's something that you're very passionate about and you really get into is those issues around cannabis. I'm looking at this and going, it was permitted, okay? There's violations. I don't think that the original permit has anything to do with where we're at tonight, okay? I certainly think that had the permit been issued a normal building permit, we may or we may not be here, okay? I'm not gonna speak to whether it would have solved everything, but I think to go back, you know, the train's already left the station. It's time to work on what we can do moving forward. I really like Peggy's idea, you know, the question you just asked about the reducing that setback. I could certainly see that there's some kind of a mitigation that could be worked out between, I think this really isn't even a tribe issue. I think that all their issues pretty much have been worked out. I think this is a coastal commission issue, and I think that there could be some kind of a mitigation worked out between the landowner and the coastal commission on that. To me, having been to the site multiple times, I can't see how it would change anything. If it was, you know, 4 feet or whatever it is shorter, it's not going to change the viewscape if you're out at the street by very much. It's not impacting anything that I can see. We have an archaeological report that says what was the most important thing on the land was not damaged, and that's really a positive thing. So I think that Peggy's got the right idea. I really do. I think she's going down the right path. I think that we should pursue something like that. I think that we have put a lot of time into this. And I think we're getting towards where we're at. I feel your frustration that we haven't got more direction from, especially the Coastal Commission, on the issue, okay? But we did reach back out. We allowed that time, and they chose not to respond to us. We asked them, the Planning Commission asked them, not the director per se, okay? And they did not get back to us. I don't know what to do with that other than to say, we had this, we paused it for another meeting, which is, in my world, time is money. In most people's world, time is money, okay? That's just 2 more weeks that this project has been put on hold and is deteriorating, and we got winter coming. We need to help to push this forward so that the resolution can be made, and I think we're on the right track. I really believe we've added to the conditions, and I think it's time to push that forward. We can't control what other agencies do. We truly can't. Yes,
Chair, I just want to clarify something. And when I sent out the email to everybody who was in the August 2nd meeting, the Coastal Commission staff was the first to answer and agree to a meeting.
But they didn't send anything to us.
Well, then they subsequently called me with people that are in the local office, San Francisco, and on up the food chain to have a direct conversation. So no, they absolutely did.
So why didn't we get anything on that? Why didn't you put a memo or something in that I had this conversation? I'm not trying to be argumentative.
Well, that's why I'm trying to be clear right now, Chair. That's why I've been trying to be clear this whole time. I want you to know what their concerns are. I'm telling you what their concerns are.
Okay. Okay. Well, I mean, if their concern is the size of the house, how do you change that at this point? It's at a roof or at trusses, let's say, the majority of it. I mean,
one of the things you need to recognize is that because the house has been relocated in violation of the permit and in violation of the building permit, now the entire house is subject to review.
So
that's just where it is.
Okay, I get that. So do you have a a suggestion. Often you have very good suggestions as to what we should do, so.
Well, I think you have many, many, many options. You know, on the one hand, I really believe in local control and local integrity and fight very hard to try to protect that. And I think that I hopefully have been clear enough that if it's approved like this, the Coastal Commission will appeal it. And maybe that's something the commission just is ready to do and let the Coastal Commission deal with it. But then that takes it out of the local hands. And you know, I think that that's a struggle.
Do you think it would be appropriate to ask the applicant what his thoughts are?
Yes.
At this point? I think that's a valid, this is a gentleman that I've worked with over the years and have known, and I think he's sharp. I think he should give his 2 cents on it.
So thank you, Chair Bongio. I certainly recognize Director Ford's concerns. And I think we've demonstrated throughout this process that we have been very accommodating, and we've recognized that there's been mistakes. I can assure you that this is not the first mistake that I will make or that a builder or developer will make, and I can assure you it won't be the last. Okay? It's unfortunate, and we're in this situation, and I think we've shown and demonstrated that we're here to work through and mitigate these measures. And for that, it's imperative that we have, you know, good, solid communication. Okay? I think we've had some very effective communication to date. I do think at times the communication could have been better. Specifically, we need bullet point items that we can adhere to and we can agree to discuss. And my position as the applicant is I'm happy to work through those items. I would be reluctant to rush something in spite of the fact of, you know, our desire to get this structure weatherproofed as we watch, you know, natural materials diminish rapidly and we see a great deal of waste. I do recognize there are probably some matters that are unresolved. And I don't think that's for lack of effort on the commission's part. I don't think it's for lack of effort on my part. I don't think it's for lack of effort on the staff's part. So I kindly would request that the commission direct staff to go back to specifically the Coastal Commission, and we identify the issues that remain outstanding in conformance with the LCP and mitigation measures that would ensure that we can approve this at the local level and satisfy all parties that are involved.
Okay, so Travis, please come back. I don't know if anybody else has any questions, but so I want to be real clear. You're asking that we do not take a vote on this and that we give staff direction to reach out to the Coastal Commission.
Yes, I think it's at this time. I think that you know, I recognize there's a lot of really good things being brought up. Peggy brought up some great issues as far as the legality of taking action on some of these issues. I think we're close as far as the mitigation measures are concerned, but I don't know that we're there. And I would sure hate to rush this in haste of trying to push something through when we're so close to getting 100%, you know, satisfaction from all the commenting entities. And so with that, as much as I would like to see an affirmative vote or an affirmative action tonight, I would ask that we or the commission direct staff to go back and bring this back at a date once we've identified those clear and concise matters with the Coastal Commission.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate you being willing to take that recommendation or give us that advice.
Does anybody else have any thoughts on that?
No, I am appreciative that Mr. Schneider voiced that, because I think in the long run it will speed things along and not jeopardize the project that is at hand here.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly supportive of that since it's the applicant that's asking for it. I mean, I always defer to the applicant or try to, and if that's what he would like to see happen, I would like to put some kind of a time frame on it though, to have it come back. I just don't want this to just disappear and you know, kind of fall off the radar. I think time is imperative. We are ending summer and getting into fall, and we are going to hit the wet season, and there's a lot to be done to get that house weather tight. So I would certainly go along with that. We should reach out to the Coastal Commission and bring it back. It would, I mean, I'd love to see it at the next meeting, but.
Yeah, Chair, I believe I remember hearing him say that he didn't want to rush it and to the detriment of the building itself, you know, try to reach out. I don't think we can put a time frame exactly on it right at this moment, but maybe an initial report back on this, nothing in detail, but where things are at maybe with the talks with the Coastal Commission and reaching out to the tribes and seeing if what we have put forth at this point, if they're in agreement with that, with what their letters were asking for. I hesitate to put a date right now, but maybe we could put a date for hearing a report on where things are at, and then maybe go forward.
Mr. Schneider, do you have something you want to add?
I would agree with Commissioner Newman. Clearly, I think everybody up here and in this room recognizes time is of the essence. At the same time, I don't want to rush it to the point that we establish, you know, a hard, firm date, like say we're coming back in 2 weeks. Okay, I think that the parties are very committed. I didn't disclose earlier, but I did reach out to the Coastal Commission. The director was very responsive to me. We did have some dialogue. There were no tangible items that we discussed as far as issues that would ensure that this could move forward. But I did receive a very favorable, you know, demonstration of commitment on their behalf that indicates to me that they're very interested in resolving this matter as well. So I'm sure with county staff under the leadership of Director Ford, that by reaching out here in short order that we will reach a resolution, and I'm comfortable with that. But at the same time, I don't want to place a finite date on that.
All right, thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, go ahead, Brian. I didn't see your hand.
Can I attempt to field a first draft of a motion?
Sure.
I would like to move that we put this off, we table this item to a date uncertain, and direct staff to bring back regular reports and direct them to continue the dialogue with the Coastal Commission and the other trust agencies to attempt to resolve the remaining issues that preclude the other agencies from supporting this project.
Well, I would second that motion.
Okay.
I appreciate that. If I may just comment, I appreciate that motion. I appreciate that you mentioned the other trust agencies, and I just want to underscore that that clearly does include renewing our attempt to have some dialogue with the Wiyot tribe and the Blue Lake Rancheria. That is, in fact, that's within the realm of concerns of the Coastal Commission as well, that we have done all we can to incorporate their concerns. And yeah, I'm hopeful that we can, in fact, gain a little bit better understanding of specifically what more we could do to improve or add to the conditions of approval attached to this project that would in fact seem satisfactory.
All right. Any other discussion on this? All right, seeing none. Tripp, a roll call vote, please.
Alan Bongio,
Yes.
Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
Mike Newman.
Yes.
Is that? That's everybody, okay.
Yeah, Melly's recused.
Yeah, that was a unanimous decision, so thank you, everybody. I thought that was a good discussion, and look forward to hearing the updates. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your participation, too. It's nice to see faces back in the seats. Okay, so we got about 15 minutes, and we still have a couple items. I'd like to go back and do the consent calendar, which we had what? Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
right.
Don't forget, before we get to the one that was bumped, we've got number H3.
Well, we would usually have done the consent calendar already, so I'm going to
Okay,
go to.
okay, sure.
We're going to do the consent calendar
Before we
item,
get to
which is
H3.
number 5, and then we'll go to H3.
Got it. That's fine.
Unless there's objection to that. I mean, I'm willing to do it, but I.
No, you were trying to make sure that those two got done first, so that's,
Right,
we did
I just
those,
was
yeah.
trying to be respectful
Fair
to
enough.
the Friends of the Dunes and.
Right.
Right.
Can we ask the director, though, if that particular item is of timeliness and concern?
There was only one person who pulled it.
We put it on consent, and it was pulled by a member of the public, and maybe it would be appropriate to just ask the member of the public what the concern is. And
Okay, and I can do that.
Chair, if you'll allow me, I'm trying to get Commissioner McAvoy back in, but
Okay.
she's got to accept the invitation.
Melanie, if you can hear us, accept the invitation to come back in. I see her as being there on my screen, but I don't. That's.
There's a bit of a delay for that. I'm here.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're back on the one item pulled from the consent, and it's item number 5, the H1 Canyon LLC conditional use permit in the Willow Creek area. And I'm gonna go, if it's okay, just ask so we don't have to go through a staff report if there's no real big question. So I'm gonna ask the one, how come it's not changing to attendees? Oh, there we go. Kent, are you there? Go ahead and *6 if you are. And now there's a second hand up too, so. 7454, are you there?
Alan, am I unmuted now? Yeah. This project is a 1 acre grow, and I basically hate to see it have a bum's rush in 15 minutes. This might normally be an hour's project to see. I would ask that this be continued to your next meeting rather than have this. There are major concerns on this project, and I don't think you're going to find I'm the only one who has concerns. And I would request, normally, to move things along, I wouldn't. I do it in zoning administrative, but I think a staff report is totally appropriate, and there's many questions on this project I think you may wish to ask. So I recommend it be continued until the next meeting and allow proper time to be heard properly.
Well, I happen to agree with him. If there's going to be a bunch of questions and he wants a staff report, we're at 9:18 right now. So I would agree that it should move on. I just wanted to ask him if there was just something simple, but it doesn't sound that way. So
it's not that case, no.
What's the feeling of the director or of the commission right now on this? I mean, I'm willing to stay, but
It's entirely your discretion. If you would like to continue it to September 15th, that would also be fine. I don't know if the applicant is here to provide their perspective on that.
I don't see, I see 7108. I believe that's Bonnie. I've seen that number enough times, so I'm not, I'm just being honest. I recognize that.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Is
that's,
I'll ask, is the applicant with us?
or an agent.
Or an agent? Yeah, that's a good point, no. Is GRCTR the agent or the applicant? I don't know. I'm just.
Star 6 to unmute.
Star 6 unmute. Well, you just muted, you unmuted and then you muted yourself again. Okay, well, I think unless.
They're unmuted
They're
right now.
unmuted, but there's no, please speak. What's the, I'm just gonna, what is the, would the commission like to do?
Put it off.
I happen to agree with that. Do you think the other one we could get through tonight, or do you think we should put it off as well? The communication.
The H3?
Yeah, emergency shelter. I mean.
It depends really on how much the commission wants to discuss it.
We're at 9:20 now. I think it's time to just call the meeting and continue both of those items to the next meeting.
Okay, can I make a suggestion then that item H3 has been on our agenda the last two meetings, correct? So maybe we could prioritize putting that first on, among the public hearings for our next meeting so that it doesn't remain to the end and get bumped again?
I think that's a great idea. Can you, is that okay with you, Director?
I think we have some control of that.
And
I have a question.
Go ahead, Brian.
And I could be totally off base on this, but it seems like it's been quite a while since we've had a status report on where we are at with implementing the last remaining projects for the general plan update, in terms of some of the remaining things like updating community plans and rezoning, and is there like a set timetable under which we're supposed to be getting updates, or is it appropriate for me to ask that at some point in the next few months or few meetings that we get a status report on that?
Director?
Yes, we can do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I would entertain a motion to continue the two items. Item number 5 from the consent calendar, the High Canyon LLC conditional use permit, and also the number 3 in the public hearings, the amendments to the inland zoning regulations, general plan, and coastal zoning regulations pertaining to emergency shelters, and have them at the, as Noah asked for, at the beginning of the public hearings. So, can I get a motion to that?
I'll motion that.
There's a motion.
I'll second.
A motion, a second. Any further discussion? You know something? Do I need to close public comment? We still got 3 people there, even though we're continuing it.
Yes.
So I'm going to make a pause on that. I'm going to go back, and I apologize because we got off on a tangent there. I'm going to close the public comment on the H1 Canyon LLC conditional use permit in the Willow Creek area, and now I'll bring it back. So we had a motion and a second. Pardon me? No, we're continuing it. So, Tripp, a roll call vote, please.
Peggy motion,
Peggy,
Noah second.
Noah second.
Alrighty. Peggy O'Neill,
Yes.
Melanie McCaver,
Yes.
Mike Newman,
Yes.
Brian Mitchell,
Yes.
Noah Levy,
Yes.
and Alan Baggio.
Yes. All right. Well, go ahead, Noel.
So just one more thing. I really appreciate that you were amenable to my suggestion earlier about working together on a simple letter
Sure.
between the chair and the vice chair with the advice of the director. So I don't think we need a motion for that. If the rest of the commission's okay, we can just let the director know that we'd like to have that on the agenda next time. Would that work?
Should we set up, well, I guess we can do that away from here, but set up some kind of a meeting where we at least,
Yeah.
throw out our thoughts on that.
That seems like a good
And
idea.
then have the director pen it.
Yeah, that would be my preferred approach as well.
Okay. So I'll do my best. You come up with a time and I'll do my best. I got pretty flexible schedule.
Yeah.
You let me know and I'll do my best to make it there.
Really appreciate you being agreeable to that. Thank you.
I'm a pretty agreeable guy most of the time. All right. With that, any other discussion or anybody have anything? We're adjourned.
Good night.